It's inevitable that we suffer. It's coming. Number 2, and let's turn to the right. Go to 1 Peter chapter 1. Or let's go to chapter 2. 1 Peter chapter 2. Peter was writing to a whole group of people in a highly cosmopolitan, civilized part of the Roman Empire, the most civilized part of the Roman Empire, Asia Minor. And he's writing to them about suffering. And this is what he says to them. We are called to participate in the sufferings of Christ. Not just, it's inevitable. We're called to participate in it. Did you know that there's a special grace attached to suffering? That many believers who avoid all, public declarations of Christ, avoid. They never get that special grace. They never get to participate in the sufferings of Christ. This is what he says in 1 Peter 2, verse 20. For what credit is it if, when you are beaten for your faults, you take it patiently? In other words, if you get the lictor's licks because you robbed a bank, he says, and you're real patient and smiling and enduring it, he says that's no credit because you're supposed to be punished for that. But when you do good and suffer, what does that mean? When your boss tells you to cheat and you say, I can't. When they say, just fudge your expense report, and you say, I can't. When they say, well, everybody does that, you say, I can't. When you're waiting in line and the person says, how many children do you have? The under 12 is 99 cents, but all the 13-year-olds and up are adults. And you go, and you tell the truth. And you have to pay more. That suffering for the truth by paying more is a blessing. Did you know what people say? They say, just say they're all 12. Just, say they're all kids. See, we live in a world that is so loosey-goosey on telling the truth. But when we stand up and tell the truth and get disparaged at our job and suffer, look at this. If you take it patiently, this is commendable before God. Verse 21, here's the key. For to this you were called. You and I were called to suffer for righteousness. To suffer when we stand for the truth. To suffer when we expose evil. We were called to that. Because Christ also suffered for us, leaving us an example that you should follow in His steps. Verse 22, who committed no sin, nor was deceit found in His mouth, who when He was reviled did not revile in return. When He suffered, He did not threaten, but committed Himself to Him who judges righteously. Now keep going to chapter 4. The thought continues. 1 Peter chapter 4. The whole 1 Peter is all about suffering and the fires of affliction. But look at 1 Peter 4 and verse 12. Beloved, don't think it strange concerning the fiery trial, 1 Peter 4:12, which is to try you, as though some strange thing happened to you. Verse 13, but rejoice to the extent that you partake of Christ's sufferings. That is an amazing verse. You and I are called to suffer so we can partake in Christ's sufferings. So that we can, in a small way, partake. You know what that word partake is? It's koinonia. It's fellowship. There is a fellowship that we do not know until we actually suffer for Jesus Christ. Now, doesn't mean we're not Christians if we're not suffering. It doesn't mean that we're not good Christians if we're not suffering. But it means that there is a communion, a fellowship with Jesus Christ that only those who are suffering know. And it's something that for decades and almost centuries in the English-speaking world, the majority of English-speaking Christians have done everything to avoid. But now we're coming to the point where we can't avoid it. I believe it's coming our way. Verse 13, rejoice to the extent that you partake of Christ's suffering. Look at this, that when His glory is revealed, you may be glad with exceeding joy. If you are reproached for the name of Christ, blessed are you, for the Spirit of glory and of God rests on you. So when we're reproached, when we're scorned and derided and scoffed and mocked and made light of in whatever other forms you want to use, for the name of Christ, we're blessed. And in that moment when we suffer, look at this. Verse 14 says, the Spirit of glory and of God rests upon you. Because on their part He's blasphemed, but on your part He's glorified. When we endure suffering in the name of Christ with a Christ-like response, it's just a radiation of God's glory. And He's just magnifying His name. Verse 15, but let none of you suffer as a murderer, a thief, an evildoer, or a busybody in other people's matters. Yet if anyone suffers as a Christian, let him not be ashamed, but let him glorify God in this manner. So second point, the first point was persecution is inevitable. The second point is we're called to participate in Christ's sufferings.